Sigmund, and I run PicoPlanet Developing. PicoPlanet creates a number of cool VR applications. If you want to check them out, go to my website, PicoPlanetDev.tk. If you're interested in building your first VR game, then you've come to the right place. In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to create a VR game using HTML and A-Frame. A-Frame is an easy-to-learn VR toolkit that lets you build VR applications out of simple code. A-Frame is based on the coding language HTML, which is a common language used to create websites. This means if you create a cool VR game and you have a website to host it on, you can upload your A-Frame files directly to the website. That way you can share them with other people on the internet. By the end of this tutorial, you will know how to create a VR game using A-Frame. The skills that you learn here can be applied to professional game design softwares like Unity and Unreal Engine. I know you're excited to start coding, so let's begin. The only software that you will need to follow along is a text editor. However, I highly recommend that you use a code editor such as Atom, Sublime Text, or whatever fits your liking. Not only will a code editor help fix errors in your code, it will also provide automatic indentation. Software aside, you need some knowledge to be able to design 3D VR experiences. One such thing that you need to understand is the coordinate system. The x-axis goes side to side, the y-axis up and down, and the z-axis out of the screen towards you. To access the files that you will need for this tutorial, please download them from the link in the description, then unzip the zip file. Inside of this zip file, you should see something like this. If you would like to see what we're working towards, you can open up the Beginner VR with HTML file in your browser by right-clicking on it, choosing Open With, Google Chrome, Internet Explorer, Microsoft Edge, any web browser that you use is acceptable. You will now be able to click and drag to pan around your scene. Now that we know what the end result will be, let's open up the template.html file in our code editor. If you do not have a code editor, just open it with Notepad. This template is a basic HTML file with two scripts added. The first script is the basic A-Frame script that lets A-Frame run. The second script is an event system, which allows controllers, such as an Oculus Rift controller, or a trigger on Google Cardboard to interact with your scene. At this point in time, you can rename template.html and change the title if you so wish. Now let's start creating the scene. Inside of the body tag, we want to add an A-Scene tag. The A-Scene tag is a play off of A-Frame. So type A-Scene. And then close the tag by repeating that, but with a slash before the A-Scene. You can now click right in the middle and hit enter a couple of times to provide yourself some space to work. The first thing that we need in our scene is a sky. So once again, like A-Scene, create an A-Sky component. However, we're not done with the A-Sky yet. We still need to add a sky color. So type color equals, and then type quotation marks. If you're not using a code editor, you might need to type quotation marks twice to create the double. Inside of that, type a color. You could use a hex color, an RGB color, or just an HTML color such as deep sky blue, all one word, and you can save the scene with Control S. There's nothing interesting in this scene yet, so let's add some green grass as a ground. A ground is a plane that you're going to be able to stand on, meaning that we can create an A-Plane component. Going to do the open A-Plane and close it just like you have been before. Now inside of our first A-Plane tag, we're now going to specify a position 0, 0, and 0 so that it's centered, just like we are. a rotation of 90 degrees. We're going to type -90 for the x-axis so that it turns from being straight up and down to straight flat. We do not need to rotate it on any other axes. We can now specify a width of 10 and a height of 10, and we can go ahead and add a color. This time I'm going to use a hex color that stands for a grassy green. There's a hashtag or a number sign, 7EC850. If you like to know where to find these colors, you can look them up in a color picker. Now that we have something interesting to see in our scene, let's go and open it in VR mode. You can minimize your code editor tab so that you're back to your files page. Right-click on template.html and open with your web browser. When this loads, you'll have a nice sky with a green plane to stand on. You can pan around your scene just like before with the demo, and using the W, A, S, and D keys, you can even move around your scene. There's not much in here yet, so we're going to add more now. Switch back to your code editor tab, and we can now add a couple of new things. We're going to space out our components just so that we can see them easier, and we can also write a comment to tell us what each thing is. So we're going to put in our less than sign, an exclamation point, and 2 hyphens. Now you can type a comment. We're going to type demo objects. This comment is not read by the computer, but it's left there so that you know what you're doing. And you can group things by comments. You'll see how we do that later. Enter yourself underneath our comment, and we're now going to create a box. So start with a box. We're going to specify a position of -3, 0.5, and -2.5. -3 on the x-axis, 0.5 on the y-axis, and -2.5 on the z-axis. We will now specify a rotation so that the box is aiming slightly more toward us. We can do 0 on the x, 45 on the y, and 0 on the z-axis. Meaning that here's the y-axis, we're going to rotate the box 45 degrees. We also need to specify a color, unless we want our box to be white. Typing color equals, and then our little sign things. What are they called? Quotation marks. We can then, inside of the quotation marks, type Dodger blue. That's another HTML color. If you look it up, you'll find that it's a nice blue that seems fitting for the box, lets it stand out from the ground but not be too similar to the sky. We can now close our first box tag and close it all together. To see our box that we added, make sure you save your scene with Control S, and then open up your web browser. You should already have this open, and click the reload button, or F5. And there's our box. We can move around it, look at it. It seems pretty lonely though. We can add a couple of other primitive objects to go next to it. So open our template.html file back up. We will now add a large sphere behind the box. We're going to start out with an A sphere with a position of -2 on the x-axis, 1.25 on the y-axis, and negative 4.5 on the z-axis. We will specify a radius of 1.25. This is 1.25 units. Normally these units are interpreted as meters. And a color of deep pink. We can then close the tag and close that. However, there's one thing that I need to explain. The reason that our box's Y position up and down and our sphere's Y position up and down is because this position is based on the center point of the object. Meaning that if our sphere has a radius of 1.25 and our center point is here, we need to move it up that 1.25, which is the radius, to get it to appear like it's sitting on the ground. Just like the box, its default size is 1 on the X by 1 on the Y by 1 on the Z, so we need to move it up 0.5 units to get it to sit perfectly on the plane. Otherwise, only half would be there. If you save your script and open it back up in your web browser, reload the page, there's now a nice pink sphere sitting next to the box. We have one more piece that we need to add though, so switch back to your code editor. We will now add our final object to this little group. We're going to create an A cylinder this time with a position of -1, 0.75, and -2.5. We do not need to rotate it, but we can specify the radius, which is 0.5, and a height of 1.5. We can also specify a color. I'm using a hex color, which is yellow. It's a slightly more pastel yellow though, so it fits with the other objects. We can now close the tag. We save our scene, open it up and reload it in our web browser. We now have a cylinder to go along with all of our other objects. As an application of what we can do with primitives, let's create a tree using a cone and a cylinder. We can create a little comment for ourselves there. And now let's create our cylinder. We have a position of 3, 0.375, -2. We do not need to rotate it, but we can scale it if we didn't want to specify a radius. So it's going to be 0.2 times the size on the X and Z axes, and 1 times normal size on the Y axis. We can also add a height of 0.75, which influences what the scale of 1 on the Y axis is. If we did this scale of 0.75 here and kept the height, then it would be 0.75% of 0.75. We can also add a color. This is another simple HTML color, saddle brown. The other way that we could do the scale here is by specifying a radius of 0.2. We can close our cylinder tag, save our code, and open it up in our web browser. When we reload the page, you'll see that we now have a cylinder. Perfect. Back in our code editor, we also need a cone to be the main part of our tree. We're going to create an A cone with a position of 3, 2.25, -2. A height of 3, and a color of forest green. Forest green seems like a good color, seeing as we're creating a tree. We can close the tag, save it, and take a look at our work. Looking at our scene now, you can see that we have a nice tree. The color's even perfect too. We'll now work on creating a light bulb that lights up when you look at it. Switching back to our code editor, we can begin creating the light bulb. This light bulb is going to need multiple components attached to it to make it run properly. That way we can look at it and look away and it will turn on and off. The first part of the light bulb is going to be the base that you would normally screw in. We're going to create this using a cylinder. So there's our A cylinder with a position of -4, 0.5, and 0.5. We're going to set our radius to be 0.5 and our height to be 1. Our color is going to be silver, seeing as the base is normally metal. Now we can begin creating our sphere, which is going to make up the most of the light bulb. We're going to write out an A sphere with a position of -4 to 0.5 and a radius of 1.25 and a color gray. We can now, instead of closing our sphere tag, enter down a line and tab in, and we're going to create the event system, which will let the sphere know when it's being looked at or not. We're going to do event -set __ enter equals _event mouse enter semicolon. And here's where we can change things. We're going to make the color a nice yellow. This time, instead of using an equal sign for the color like we did up here, we're going to use a colon. And since we don't have a perfect yellow color from HTML, we'll use a hex code. FFD745 creates a nice glowing yellow. We're going to go down a line again and copy and paste our event set enter code. We're going to change enter to leave and mouse enter to mouse leave. We're going to change our color back to gray when the mouse leaves. However, to make our sphere work, we're not quite done yet. In between the A sky and A plane tags, we need to create an A camera with no arguments. Inside of the A camera, we're going to add an A cursor. This is going to provide the cursor that lets the sphere know if it's being looked at or not. And we can close off our A camera tag. Saving the file and reloading the browser, we can now see our sphere and our cylinder that have combined to create the light bulb. And if we look at it with the cursor right there, we'll find that it turns on and back off. In the last part of this tutorial, I'm going to explain how to create an animation. Underneath our sphere and our light bulb, we can create a comment letting us know that this is an animation. And underneath that, we're just going to create a simple box. We don't even need to specify size. However, since we're going to be putting a lot into this box, we need to go down and write everything underneath. We're going to set its position to be -2, 1, and 4. And we're going to rotate it 45 degrees on every axis so that it's facing toward us. We're going to set its color to orange, hex code FFBB00, and we can create our animation. This is a property that you could add to any object. Our animation has a property that it's animating of position, meaning that it's going to animate the position, aka move the object. It's going to go to -2 to 4, so it's going to move up and down 1 unit. A duration of 1500, meaning 1.5 seconds, because this is in a millisecond time frame. We need a semicolon right there. After duration, we're going to put our direction, dir, to be alternate, meaning that when it hits the end of its animation, it's going to go back. When it hits that end, it's going to go up again, and back, and up, and back. If you set direction to be normal or reverse, it would just go, for example, up, or it would start up and go back, but it wouldn't repeat. So since we want our animation to keep on repeating forever, we're going to do direction alternate, easing linear, meaning it's not going to speed up or slow down by the end of its animation. It's going to be a smooth progression, as opposed to starting out slowly, then ramping up, and then slowing down again. Finally, we're going to set the loop to be true, so that it repeats this animation. We can then close off our quotation marks and close off our box. Now we'll try and see if this works. Saving our file and reloading the page produces exactly what we were looking for, a box that moves up and down over a duration of 1.5 seconds. Thanks for watching this tutorial. I'm Sig from PicoPlanet, and if you're interested in some of my VR applications, head on over to PicoPlanetDev.tk to view my website and all of my apps. You can find them on the Play Store or download them from my website. I hope to see you again soon. Thank you and goodbye.